Greetings, everybody. Please bear with me. This is my first time ever creating a recording to try to share on YouTube. I want you to know that I have a strong interest in trying to figure out where do the missing children go. And right now, my heart is so stuck on the missing boys. I'm going to call them O&O in California. And I know anybody else on YouTube who's been following these cases will see this and will know exactly who I'm talking about. Okay, so there's tons of different ways in which other people, just like myself, want to crack this case. We want to find these boys, and our heart is set on it. And we can pray and pray and pray, and that's probably going to be our best way. But it still feels like we should do more, right? So, we've looked at the news. We've looked at people collecting clues that live around there or be driving over there trying to, get information. We've seen false setups, where people trying to, mess with the evidence. And it just makes things even more confusing. And also we've even reached out to Spirit and tried to listen to those spirit box recordings, which are very depressing in my opinion. And, I've even gone on a limb and attempted to listen to tarot readings. And, I have to shut it off because I don't know if I can even believe what the intuition is telling. But this is strange because I love spirit and I love the ability that we have, especially as women, to be intuitive. And so I do trust the instinct. But I feel like there should be something more to grasp onto rather than just what somebody thinks they might feel the spirit's telling them. And therefore, that's why I trust good old traditional astrology. And back in the days of Jesus, before we had the internet, what did we do? We looked up at the sky and we watched the cycles of the moon, used it as our light, and we used it to find our direction on where we needed to go. And guess what? That's an old technique that's kind of lost these days. In criminal cases, a lot of astrologers will utilize a technique called event charts or forensic astrology. And, forensic astrology is really great, especially when you want to actually locate the exact spot. They use the degrees and the numbers to do a calculation. And sometimes it's point on. But the thing with event charts and that kind of criminal astrology, you have to really be confident that the last time a person was missing and their location of where they were last seen. And sometimes that information, even if you get it through a family member of the person that went missing, could be inaccurate. So I really love instead to utilize Horary Astrology or Horary Astrology, which means the chart of the hour. Now, the grandfather of Horary Astrology is known as William Lilly, and he utilizes terms that might not even be utilized anymore in this day and age. For example, back then, if let's say most people, had farms and had animals, so a lot of times the value of, let's say, sheep had needs to be utilized, like thought of today in the modern times as maybe your cloth or your clothes or your bedding or things that you utilize to keep warm. If it's, say, the wool that was of value at the time. I know in the chart that I want to talk about today that I had completed, he talks about a shed, a cow shed, more than once, and in this case with the O&O case, the adoptive father had a garage, or they called it sometimes a shed in the news. So he doesn't have a cow shed, but you know what I mean. We have to think of if Lily was referencing a cowshed, we have to modernize it to the case, which in this case it would be, the garage that was on the property. So I just want to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's just talk about why astrology, especially Horary Astrology, Horary, is better in this than any other form of spirit guiding. Okay, so the houses of a zodiac sign, it's pretty much agreed upon by all astrologers what the standard meanings of each house is. You want to think of house 1 through house 12 as someone's like cycle of life. So when you look at house 1, you are talking about, you can imagine one person that's like a baby. And at this point, where is a baby? A baby is only just starting to get awareness of its environment, just starting to get awareness of its body and realizing that, my hands and my fingers do these things. They're not able to have the perspective of other people. They're, allowed to be completely and utterly self-centered, and it's normal and it's okay. Okay, so then if a little baby gets a little bit older, they move on in your mind, just symbolically to house number 2. House 2 is now, the child is now reaching outside of itself a little bit, and it figures out what belongs to him or her. So, that's my baby bottle. That's my toy. And if you try to take the toy away from the baby, what does the baby do? The baby cries. So the baby starts to learn about possession, and it gets a little bit stronger on knowing this is where I'm most comfortable. So if you take that baby outside of its natural environment, the bedroom that it sleeps in, that sort of thing, you're going to get a reaction that's not positive. So they have a awareness of what's their comfort zone and that sort of thing. So then when we start going into house 3, now we're going from beyond the body, beyond the outside things that are reachable, that belong, and now they're interacting. They're interacting with brothers and sisters, their siblings. They get to know the next door neighbor that comes over and says coochie coochie coo. And they start to learn about sharing, no, this is my possession, this is my toy. And then their little brother or sister takes it, they cry, and then they start to learn that, hey, there's a reciprocity, like now, we can share, we can interact, and this is actually fun. Now I like sharing my toys with my brothers and sisters and little friends in the neighborhood. I don't mind when my auntie comes over and takes me to go for a walk. I'm not going to cry anymore. Now I'm starting to interact with the world, but I don't want to go too far. This is the house of, my neighborhood, my close family, and, maybe my little preschool, and then driving home, and then going to my routine little friend's house every Monday, and then coming home to, every Tuesday I go to grandma's house for dinner, then I come home. And then my pattern, it's the same. It's a routine. I get to know it. I'm familiar. This is still my home environment. This is where I'm comfortable. This is my stomping grounds. So when you look at house 1 through 6, we're still talking about what is of like the, growing up and, close, like say having fun and, my childhood. And then when we start getting outside of that, we start to, develop really strong relationships with other people. So that's when we start looking at house 7. And then like say house 8 would be the house of, transitions. And like house 7 is often, where we would look for like a marriage partner, clues on somebody that, maybe a best friend, that's like a lifelong soulmate friend. And, and then when you get further into the cycle, it starts to talk about, what becomes like your foundation in like philosophy and religion. Also, instead of working at Burger King, now we're looking at like your career goals or like, the career that you're going to choose, that sort of thing. So, I like to just point out that whenever I describe my horary results or what I come up with, a lot of times the signs, the zodiac signs, all have like certain meanings as well. That it's almost like a key. You can kind of have a universal key to know what these things mean, just like the houses do, just as I described. And if two signs are influencing one house, then I call it a duplex. And I just made that up. But you know how like a duplex is like, it looks like two houses stuck together. It's like, or like a townhouse. So if I talk about a duplex, I'm talking about